going with us down to the courthouse when we get ready to move.
I'm 109 or 110. I'm too old. Can't do nothing but get in the way.
You can inspire the others.
Jimmy, what you got going in the back of your head?
We're going to have one of our girls drink from the white people's fountain down at the courthouse.
The white folks fountain? Fountain. You know, when they pass that segregating law, that old loon come round slobbering and hollering. I tell him, Edgar, if you touch me, I take my cane and crack your skull.
We won't get you to arrest her. If one of us did it, we'd just get beat up.
Now, what you want old fat Gurdry to arrest her for?
So we can march down to the courthouse.
Oh, Jimmy. You see, these folks round here ain't ready for nothing like that yet.
That's our job.
Talk to them, Jimmy. Talk to the young ones.
We don't have that kind of time, Miss Jane.
What else you got, Jim?
Hello and welcome to Book versus Movie. This is a podcast where we read books that have been adapted into movies, and then we try to decide which we like better, the book or the movie. I am Margot P. of ColoniaBook.com, and this is my good friend and co-host, Margot D. of Brooklyn Fitchick.
Hi, everyone.
We're just saying I'm still not back in my house, y'all. Todd is holding down the fort. He's the guardian of the house. He's more rugged than I, and can be there without all of the ModCon's breath. So I'm in my mom's house. So if it's very echoey, I'm in a very echoey room. It's the quietest room I could find. But yeah, so apologies for that in advance. Pretty soon we'll be back where we belong. Excited to talk about today's book and movie. It's funny, this is something, it was on TV when we were kids. I remember having to watch it in school. But revisiting it now, at this point, it's totally different than what I remembered. I don't know why, but we'll get into it in a minute. But if you are just joining us because maybe you love this movie, you love Cicely Tyson or Ernest Gaines, welcome. There are numerous places where you can interact with us. You can meet other listeners of this podcast. And most importantly for us, you can make suggestions for future books and movies that you would like for us to cover. And it doesn't have to be strictly a book because we try to crank out a new episode every single week. Sometimes we'll do a shorter literary source like a play or a short story or magazine article even. So anything that has a literary source is on the table as far as we're concerned. And so if you have ideas for things that you would like us to cover in the future, you want to meet other listeners, interact with us, there's a couple places you can do that.
You can be sure to like our Facebook page because we do post all the episodes there, but we're much more interactive in our private Facebook group. And you type in Book VS Movie Podcast Group and ask to join. Thaddeus puts up 2 posts on there. One is a list of the shows we've done already, and one's a list of show ideas coming up. We also need to have the movie part be on a streaming app. So please keep that in mind when you're suggesting something. Also, the book not to be too long. We're not going to cover Lord of the Rings anytime soon. Anyway, all the other places, all the social medias and Twitter and Instagram and Threads, it's Books versus a Movie. You spell that all out. And we have an old-timey email, book versus movie podcast, spelled it all out at gmail.com. And if you would like some stickers, we will send some stickers to you.
And if you really enjoy the show and would like to help keep us in books and movies, you can also support us on Patreon.
Patreon. We're putting up all of our episodes. I thought it was from 2022. It's actually, Margot, it's 2021, and then previous to that's going up there right now. So the recent ones I've just put up are My Fair Lady, One Night in Miami, The Princess Bride, Jolene, All the President's Men, Apocalypse Now, and The Phantom Toll Booth. Yes, we cover all sorts of books here. We have just a couple of very affordable options, and we really use the money just for the books and the movies and just for the software and stuff to keep the show going. So we appreciate all of you that sign up there. And if money is tight or you're just looking for another way to help us, if you could please, leave us a review at whatever podcast app you use. We'd be very, very appreciative.
we were just saying a minute ago that this is a book that a lot of us, our generation, read in school, or we watched the movie in school. It was like a rainy day kind of a movie, or when you're studying the civil rights movement or studying the Civil War, this is a movie that often comes up. It's like one of those, like the teacher would drag the TV into the classroom, and
The VHS,
the audiovisual club would roll in the
AV geek. My brother was an AV geek. He loved it because you got to, he just liked to watch slides and movies anyway. He didn't care.
So something that it's so funny. I something that I don't know why I got my wires crossed. I forgot that this is a fictional novel.
Yes,
forgot.
Yeah. Well, because it sounds like it's real. It sounds like what it is. I mean, but it's a novel.
Yeah, it is a novel. I just wanted to say that like right off the bat. And I noticed I watched it on YouTube, and where there are comments, and it was very sweet, but there were comments like, "Oh, Miss Jane Pittman, you're such an inspiration. I'm so sorry for what my ancestors did. Please forgive me, Miss Pittman."
On TikTok, I put a couple of videos on TikTok at Brooklyn Margot, and immediately a couple of racist, but everybody else is like, "Bless your heart. Thank you for your service. Thank you for," I'm like, I just think it's so sweet, the sentiment.
And not that there were plenty of women in particular like Jane Pittman, who did live that long and did live that history, but I think it's a testament to the skill of our author today. We're going to be talking about Ernest J. Gaines, and the amount of research and I mean, not just his great writing, his wonderful writing skill as a writer, but the amount of work and research that he did on this book. Really, I mean, you really believe it's a real woman. It's very plausible.
Should we talk about him for a sec? Ernest James Gaines. He was born in Oscar, Louisiana, and that's where he passed away. He was born in a sharecropper family. He was born on a plantation. They lived in those quarters, even though slavery was over. This was 1933 when he passed away. When he was about 15, he moved to the Bay Area, Vallejo, California. He was one of the few people in his family who could write, that had an education. So when they asked him, "Why did you become a writer?" he goes, "Well, I had to read and write for everybody in my family." And so he started like as a teenager. At 17, he wrote his first novel. He went to SFSU. He went to Stanford. And then he was a writer in residence at University of Louisiana. He moved back to Louisiana. He loved it down there. He was married to Diane Saulney. He also wrote A Lesson Before Dying, which I know a lot of people talk about, but I have never read that book. I'd really like to now that I've learned more about him. We also have a clip that we have in our Facebook group, and I think I also posted on TikTok, that he had a bit of, he was okay with this adaptation, but when you watch the movie, especially, I was like, this is only an hour and 30 minutes. It's because I remember...
Because it's a lot of history we're covering in this book. Yeah.
It's a lot. It's an hour and 30 minutes. Or there's some subplots that had to be taken away and things like that. But it's an impressive writing debut, and it's a challenge to read because he's writing in the patois of the speaker, of the people in the South. And like I said, some people weren't they didn't know how to read or write, or they shortened words because they didn't, and whatever. So to keep up with that was sometimes a challenge, but that's added to its authenticity. It just felt like he talked to a 100-year-old woman, and this is what she told him.
It's really true. And he did, there's numerous interviews where he talks about his writing of this book, and he read, just poured over enslaved people narratives from the era and the area, Louisiana in particular. And but also beyond that, I was very, very impressed by how accurately, I guess is the word I have to use, he captures a woman's point of view, because he's writing for the most part. It starts out where we have this kind of slight device of a sort of a journalist who's interviewing her, but that kind of drops away as her narrative goes on, and it really is told from her point of view. We get her thoughts and feelings and struggles and how she deals with them, and I mean, I was just blown away. And but before we get into like all of that about the actual book, I just want to let's just place this into context, because I mean, we talk about this every February, because every February we try to do Black History Month here. And you and I, our generation, so our parents were the baby boomers, who were pre-civil rights, and we are the first post-civil rights movement generation. And so partly because I think there wasn't enough distance from it yet, partly because I'm going to be real careful here. People don't like to feel bad. You and our education was not great about this era. I think what the education that my kids have gotten about this era has been, I've just been amazed, like how much more complete a picture they were given in school than what you and I were given in school. Like our narrative really was like, oh, there's no more racism.
It's also post.
I have a dream.
It was also post Vietnam.
Yes.
And so there was a lot of that kind of hanging in the air. Like it was a war we didn't exactly win, and it was unwinnable.
Yeah, a lot of whitewashing going on in our history education.
Right. And like Margot said, like my mom said, when she was a kid in the 50s, she had a textbook, and it said that the slaves, that was the term they used. It wasn't so bad for them because they're dark skinned; they could absorb the sun better. So it didn't.
Yeah, I mean,
those are the things that were
So So we just, and it was really weird. I mean, looking back on it now, like we didn't know any different. But looking back on it now, I do feel it's very strange because on the one hand, like what we were learning in our books, was so, so whitewashed. I don't know how else to put it. So sugar-coated, so selective in terms of what we were taught about and what we weren't taught about. And at the same time, our teachers and neighbors and relatives had lived through this era, had lived through this history, had participated in it even. And, unless you were fortunate to have, and I had a few along the way, but not as many as I should have had. Unless you had educators that were willing to talk about this, and I'm sure they were pressured not to talk about it, we just were not told. We were so kept in the dark. And as historians ourselves, we know that like when parts of history are kept in the dark, there's a reason. Somebody's benefiting from that. And so I would say, whenever you're learning about things for the first time in your history, your nation's history, whatever it might be, ask yourself, why didn't I learn about this before? Who benefited from me not knowing about this before? And a big eye-opening, cataclysmic shift in our culture that changed the trajectory, at least slightly, was the juggernaut that was Roots. Mm-hmm. Talk about a long book.
I've never read it, actually.
I've never read it either.
Yeah.
But Roots was like, I remember, I can't remember. I was a tiny child when Roots was on television, and people talked about it for years and years and years, and they would replay it, and people's minds were it was like they had no idea that the United States had ever even had enslaved people anywhere. How could you not know that? I do not know, but there was a whole Civil War. Anyway, it was massive. But the book and movie that we're talking about today predates that.
Right.
Predates that and covers a very similar narrative, the exact same kind of period of history, all told through the story of this one woman. It's a novel, and And I wonder, like, and not to say that this movie wasn't well received. It certainly was.
Oh,
It got
absolutely.
accolades and all that, and the book too. But I do wonder, like, if it didn't, why wasn't it like the massive mind blow that Roots was? And I can only think it's because it's the central character is a woman. But that's my feminist take.
It's also, I would say, it was several nights, right? It was like
Yes.
5 or 6 episodes.
That's
with
true.
Roots.
Because with Roots, like, not everybody watched the first night, but the people who
Right.
did were like, you need to watch this. And so it picked up viewers, you're right, with each consecutive night. So this book and movie predate Roots by a few years, under 5 years, I think.
Yeah.
And then another almost 5 years before that is another book, a very similar book as well, that we briefly mentioned. It's never been adapted into a film, but I want to mention it in case you've never read it and you're interested in this period of history. Again, from a woman's perspective and from a woman author this time. There's a book from 1966 called Jubilee. And it was written as sort of a answer/antidote to Gone with the Wind. The author's name is Margaret Walker, and it covers this same exact era. I believe that the central character, if I remember, is born enslaved, and then it takes you through the whole like Reconstruction and all of that. I don't think she lives quite as long as Miss Jane Pittman does, but a lot of the same themes, and it's a really great novel if you've never read it before. And I think that one takes place in Georgia and Alabama. And our novel today takes place in Louisiana. And that was very interesting to me, too. I've had, because the movie doesn't really dwell on the Louisiana of it all, but the book really gives us some really amazing context about the unique situation and culture going on in Louisiana, right?
Yeah, and you and I have a friend, Christine, that's from there. So, yeah, there's the French aspect of it. There's the Creole aspect of it. It's the indigenous people that were there. It was a port city, New Orleans. So there was a lot people going in and out. My mother's people are from the South, and my mother said, and this is up to like Paula Deen, just like 10 years ago, said like they were like family. They cried when they had to leave. And that's part of the myth making that's been going on too. When you see how harsh and horrible it is, people want to think like, like Ben Affleck famously had his ancestry talked about on a television program, and he wanted it tanked because they mentioned that his parents were slave owners, had enslaved people, and he's from Georgia. And you think about the odds, like probably. I know. So this is a very interesting book. It comes out in 1971, and the novel, our main character, not only just a female, a woman, but she's a girl. She's a child.
She's a child. Yes. So there's not as much flipping back and forth in time in the book as there is in the movie. The book, we kind of, like I said, we open with this sort of device of the unnamed narrator. We don't know if it's what their color is or their gender. We don't really know anything about them, but they're seeking out Miss Jane Pittman. But she's 110. Mm-hmm. And she's 110 in the 60s at this point, right in the smack in the middle of the civil rights movement, and so she's sharing her life story, and so she's born with a different name, Tycy, and the story begins. Her earliest memories that she shares are so she's an enslaved child working in her bare feet on a plantation in Louisiana. She starts it right at the very end of the Civil War. So she's on the plantation. The war has, everybody's kind of like at bare threads here. And the war is ending, or maybe has ended. It's right around the end. And some Confederate soldiers, what did she call them? Secesh Secesh, some Confederate secessionist soldiers come through the plantation, and she has to serve them and feed them and whatnot, and they move on, and then some Union soldiers, some Yankee soldiers, come through the plantation also, and she has to also feed them and give them water and help them out. And the Yankee soldiers, and this is a little bit different in the movie than it is in the book, but one Yankee soldier asks her about like how are you treated here. She tells again, cannot stress enough, she is a child.
She's like 9 or 10.
She is a child.
She's a kid, and she doesn't know how to read or write. Her parents died on this.
Her parents are long gone. Yeah,
long gone. She's alone. She doesn't have shoes because she keeps outgrowing them. Yeah. And so this is, I know, and so one of them is like, oh, so do they beat you here, or they treat you okay? And they
She's
don't
like,
up north.
Just with the cat of nine tails. Like, what?
You poor thing.
Oh my gosh.
And then he tells her, well, that's your slave name, Ticey. You know what your name is now? Your name is Jane Brown. That's going to be your new name. And so she tells her, the owner of her tells them, you're going to call me Jane from now on. And they don't take it well. But the thing with her character that we learn pretty quickly and sticks with her through her life is her obstinacy. She's a very stubborn person.
That she is. And sometimes it's good, and sometimes it gets her into trouble. But one of the things that struck me about reading this in the book, though, is that this is a scene that, and I'm sure this came up, in the narratives. I'm sure they must exist in the historical record. But this is a scene that's in Roots. Just saying.
Yes.
Right? So
there's been some talk about Alex Haley.
So she goes back to her owners and the people who own her, and says that this is my name now. My name's now Jane Brown. My name's now Jane Brown. And they're like, no. And they whip this, again, child. They whip a child. Like, I don't. When you read the history, and thank God we have the history that we do have available to us, but there's so much that's still out there that we just don't know. These things really did happen. Mm-hmm. And somehow I don't remember the name of it, but like, remember those experiments? They were done to kind of determine how Nazi and SS soldiers could be so cruel to other human beings, and the experience where they told you you're going to shock the person in the other room when you turn the dot, right? I wonder if it isn't that. Like, if it just becomes normalized to treat other human beings this way. I don't understand, like, what are the steps on that road?
Right.
It's baffling to me, but there it is. And so she, for the rest of her life, has these massive scars on her from where they whipped her for not answering to a name that wasn't her name.
Right. And then they put her out in the field. Previous to that, she was helping take care of the kids on the inside of the house. The Civil War ends, and the plantation owners are like, well, you don't have to go home, but you can't, you could stay here, but I'm not going to pay you because it's the Yankees' fault because they came through and they stole everything from us. So, but you got a place to stay if you want to stay with me, and I'll try to be nice to you. And she had in her head that the Union soldier had said he's up in Ohio, and in Ohio it's much better. So she's like, well, I want to go to Ohio. And they're like, you don't even know where it is. She goes, I don't care. It's better
not
than
here. Yeah.
It's not here. So she and a massive group go to Ohio, and they have no sense of direction. Like, they're trying that the sun sets here.
They just are going generally north.
And there's there's patrollers that are the precursor to the KKK. I mean, horrible, that are chasing black people who are trying to escape. They're not even escaping anything. They're just trying to go north.
They're just to terrorize them.
Just to terrorize them.
Yeah.
And there's a horrible scene where she takes off with one boy who's like 4 or 5. His name's Ned. And she takes him, and they hide from a group of them. And they are so used to violence that the kids are just quiet as mice. And they witness this carnage of all these people, Big Laura and her baby, and all these people.
Ned, the little boy, his mother is Big Laura, and his mother and baby, I think it's a girl, baby sister, are murdered right in front of him. They come in and they kill basically everybody but Jane and Ned, who are hiding, and being so quiet. I mean, not screaming in horror like a child would. Because again, it's not the first time they've seen something like this. It's really, of course, it's not an easy read.
We should say that. Yeah. And I also had the audiobook, which was not an easy listen.
Oh, I'll bet. Oh my. Yeah. No, I didn't do the audiobook. I just really love the way that he has her tell this story, because she's telling you what she felt as a young girl, and seeing all of this and how it made her feel, and but she's telling you from a 110-year-old woman's perspective, who's had a lot of time to reflect and see how things played out and didn't play out. And it's just really super well done. And, really describes what did post Civil War, Reconstruction, which was just, slavery light, if that, just as cruel, just as exploitative. And what did that look like in everyday life? And one of the things that I thought was really, and this is in the movie, the whole thing about, because not everybody in the South is a plantation owner. Not every white person in the South is a rich plantation owner. There are plenty of non-wealthy people whose families got sent off to die in this war over money and owning people that they had nothing to do with, right? And how they blamed the Black people.
If it weren't for you, this wouldn't have happened.
Yeah.
And she's a child.
She's a child.
She's a baby, and she becomes a mother to him. Ned calls her mom.
Yeah.
She's like 5 years older than him or something.
Yeah.
So that gives you, and then she goes to one house where there's a widow who screams at her, "This is your fault. I lost my husband. I lost my son."
To a little girl and a tiny boy.
Babies. And she just says, "Can you tell me where there's a pond or a stream or something, because we're thirsty?" And she's like, "All right, hold on." And she gives them some water, but then she screams at them to go away again. I mean, this just happens over and over again. And so they wind up on another plantation type. It's plantation light, I guess.
Sharecropping, yeah.
Sharecropping. And so they actually get education at this place.
Yes.
And so somebody teaches Ned.
That's very interesting too. So I love, and that's really not in the movie too much. They're alluding to it, but it really goes into the book. And it's kind of my favorite part of the book, I think. That whole story about how they want education. They're certainly entitled to education, and should have it. And this like grudgingness on the parts of the, because you're quote unquote free, but you have no access to the resources that you've helped build for generations and generations. You're just like plunk, just thrown out on the street, basically. And so you get stuck into this whole sharecropper system, but and the family that on whose land she is sharecropping with Ned and the rest of that community, understand like, okay, yeah, they should have a school. So they build a school, but anytime they start to learn anything, here comes the Klan. Like, burn down the school and chase away the teacher and kill people. And, it's this weird, like, let's build them a school and then let's burn down the school. And it's so chaotic and traumatic for so many years. And so there's stories about like, well, first this teacher came and then this happened. And then then we got this other teacher and then this happened. And then we got another teacher. So there's this whole like narrative in the second half of the book about the succession of teachers that come to the plantation and what happens to them and how intertwined, even more intertwined now, the sharecroppers' lives are with the family who they're serving.
Yeah.
Yeah. And a whole story about the owner, and this is, again, not in the movie at all. The owner of the plantation, the sharecropping one, and she's there for like 12 years or something. He has two sons. One is white and one is black. And I can't remember, does the black one, he gets killed, right? He's mouthing off. And the man's like foreman of the plantation's like, I don't care whose son you are, and kills him. And they don't do anything about it. And like, nobody seems to care. But his brother, they were close. The two boys were close together. And so the brother is like despondent and becomes very lost. And he falls in love with a teacher that comes to teach. She's a Creole, so she's very light skinned, but she's still black. As far as they're concerned, you have a drop of, it was a whole thing about even a drop. So stupid. And so he's madly in love with this teacher, and the teacher knows what's up. She's like, this is
never going to work.
It's not going to work. There's literally no place we are going to go.
This is not going to work in any situation, anywhere. Not in my community, not in your community. Like, literally, you need to get off this farm and find somebody.
Yeah.
But he can't. He's in love with her, and he's so upset. So there's a lot of stuff that happens. It's very dramatic.
It's very dramatic. And we won't spoil it for you, but it's truly sad, and it leads to Jane leaving that plantation ultimately. And
Ned gets away.
And
that's when she meets Joe Pittman.
Uh-huh.
And she never has kids. Because she says she's barren. I don't know.
And we don't even get the details of why,
and I guess I don't want to know.
I know.
Yeah. Oh. So she meets and he loves her. Mm-hmm. And they're on another sharecropper kind of situation, and they're being paid. And Ned's off learning something. Like
Ned's gone to school. He's fled for his life, and he's very smart. And he eventually gets himself into a college. And so he's off at school. She has met Joe Pittman, who she's very much in love with, and he's in love with her. And they've moved to a slightly better sharecropping situation. Joe Pittman is extremely skilled as a horseman. And he loves horses. Working with dangerous horses.
There's a lot of horses in this story too. There's a lot of it's very equine. So he can, whatever your toughest horse, he can handle them. And she falls in love with him, but then she's always worried he's going to get killed by one of those horses one of these days. She predicts it. And then she goes to a Creole magic woman and says, help me with the spell so that my husband, because she sees a horse, and in the movie it's a white horse, but in the book it's a black horse that she sees, that she's convinced is evil and is going to kill her husband. And her husband's like, I can fix that horse. Don't you worry about it. So she sees this fortune teller. She goes home, and then her big idea is, I'm just going to let the horse out. So then that horse will go away, and then Joe won't be killed by this horse. But Joe is angry, and he gets on another horse to look for the horse, and then he dies looking for the other horse. Oh, so she lost the love of her life.
It's so sad. Yeah.
Weren't they going to move together someplace? Well, they'd sold everything.
They did. They do move. Yeah. So they've moved, and so she's in a slightly better situation, and she's become everywhere she goes, she becomes like a part of that community.
Right.
She's people really love her and look after her. As she gets older, they start to look after her. Then Ned comes back, and again, we're in the Reconstruction. Jim Crow is on the horizon south, and again, people don't like that in Louisiana. No. And he knows that he's got a wife and a kid now. And he feels, but nevertheless, this is where he's from. He feels it's very important to him to do what he can for the people that his family, they're his family. And he knows they're probably going to kill him. And so that's a whole, so yeah, they do, which they, spoiler alert,
Yeah, spoiler.
He dies. And so she lives through so much. So fast forward, she's now like the grandma of this community for most of her life, which is the
she
better part of
outlives
her
a
life.
lot of people.
She outlives a lot of people. She's an old lady for like a real long time. And so she's bringing up babies. She's helping. She's respected. You know, in the church they listen to her, and people come to her for advice. And she has a woman who lives with her, looks after her, and I forget what the woman's name is. Lena.
Mm-hmm.
And Lena has a baby boy named Jimmy. And Jimmy is a lot like Ned. Like Jane sees a lot of Ned in Jimmy. He's very, very smart. Puts two and two together and knows what's up and is concerned about what's happening to the people around him. And Jimmy grows up and becomes part of the civil rights movement. He becomes involved in the civil rights movement. And again, like so much violence. And, I'm going to recommend, because I think it's in Louisiana that takes place. There was an amazing podcast a few years ago. I'm sure you can still listen to it. It's called White Lies. Mm-hmm. And it's about, I might have the state wrong, but it's about the civil rights movement. And it's about a white, I don't remember if he was a priest or a pastor, but he was a clergyman from Boston who went down to join the civil rights movement, and he's murdered, and how the whole community covered it up. And it's really, really hushed over, and they put out a false narrative. And what's cool about the podcast is they actually find out what happened. So it's really amazing. But all of this is to say, like, it was a lot of violence, and you and I were just not taught about the onslaught of just carnage that was brought upon these kids, because it was very much spearheaded by kids. So Jimmy is in the middle of all of this, and when the book ends, he had been trying to convince Jane, who's 110, to go and drink from the white water fountain at the courthouse in the nearest town in Bayonne. And I don't remember if I think Jimmy is shot.
Yes, he is.
Is he killed though? Does he die in the book?
He's killed. I think,
okay.
Yeah. But it's a very quick segment. Like he's gone, and then she has to decide very quickly because they're saying there's going to be a girl that's going to be arrested for doing it. You need to save her. So she's going to go in after being so old. No one's going to. They figure
they're not going to mess with her. What are they going to do? And if they do, they're going to look really bad.
Really horrible.
Yeah, really terrible. Like even worse than with the kids. And so the book sort of ends where she's just about making up her mind to go and do this. She, and the reason she doesn't like immediately go like, yes, Jimmy, I'll go desegregate the water fountain, is because she has every reason to believe like nobody cares about me.
Right. The trauma this woman has lived through. Like, yes.
What difference is it going to make? Look at how everything I've done, and I've lost everybody who's important to me. There was
one man, Clavo. He's the French accent Bayou guy.
Oh yeah, the one who kills Ned. Yeah.
The guy who kills Ned. He was friends with Jane. Like they hung out. She's known people that have killed people around her. Yeah, that said they liked her. Yeah, that sat with her, had meals, and so she doesn't trust white people very much. And I say I don't blame you.
Nope, me either. I'll
stay in my little part of the world where I'm not going to get whacked over the head. Like I've already been beaten enough in my life. I'm done. But he's asking her, it's important. You got to do this. And so she, like I said, she's very obstinate, but she does listen to reason. Again, I think this is at a point where she realizes I need to step up.
Right. And that's where the book ends. That we don't actually see her. I don't think we actually see her in the book go to she doesn't drink from the water fountain in the book. So It's great. I mean, it's wonderful. I really loved it, and I was so impressed with the whole thing. I liked the structure of it. I thought that it really moves a lot. I mean, it's a lot of history we're covering, but it's not. It's totally plausible. At no point am I like, really though. Never. I really believe it. I really buy it, and I love the. I really believe that I'm getting this woman's point of view. I don't know how else to put it.
Well, that's why people really thought that she was a real person.
Yeah.
And so that's when they made this TV movie. A generation of us probably all thought that, oh, that's a biopic. We're watching.
I had forgotten that it was not a real person.
No. So should we play? We don't have a trailer, but what we have is a TCM segment. We love our TCM intros on this podcast. So we'll play that and then we'll get into this episode.
Hello and welcome to Turner Classic Movies. I'm Dave Karger. It's great to have you with me tonight as we continue to celebrate Martin Luther King Jr. Day with a lineup of films that helped break the walls of intolerance on the screen. And not just the big screen, as you're about to see with the drama we have next, which originally aired on CBS. Produced by Tomorrow Entertainment in 1974 and starring Cicely Tyson, our beloved friend here at TCM who passed away 2 years ago this month. It's the autobiography of Miss Jane Pittman. Tyson won 2 Emmy Awards for her performance in the title role as a black woman in the South, born into slavery in the 1850s, who lives to see the civil rights movement of the 1960s. She also has the honor of taking part in the movement after a young girl in her Louisiana town is arrested for attempting to drink from a segregated water fountain. Adapted from Ernest Gaines's 1971 novel, the narrative is framed so that we're introduced to Tyson's character on her 110th birthday, the day before the fountain incident prompts her to grant an interview to a persistent journalist. As that interview unfolds, flashbacks follow Jane from her childhood as a plantation slave to her emancipation just after the Civil War, then through the Reconstruction and Jim Crow eras, before circling back to the present day. Over a century's worth of the black experience through the eyes of one woman. This synopsis likely has you wondering how Cicely Tyson, who was 50 at the time, managed to portray Pittman from her 20s to 110. The aging process was achieved through a revolutionary mix of makeup and prosthetics created by special effects artists Stan Winston and Rick Baker, who won an Emmy for their efforts. I had the pleasure of introducing this film with Cicely Tyson on the 2019 TCM Classic Cruise, and it's an experience that I will always cherish. From 1974, directed by John Korty, with a screenplay by Tracy Keenan Wynn, here is the autobiography of Miss Jane Pittman. After writing the now classic novel, The Autobiography of Miss Jane Pittman, which was published in 1971, Ernest Gaines was often asked whether his story was fiction or nonfiction, since it had such an authentic quality. Gaines assured readers it was fiction, but he certainly did his due diligence when it came to researching the eras represented while giving his main character's narrative plenty of historic context. Gaines later shared how he'd read interviews with former slaves that had been conducted by the WPA in the 1930s. I got their rhythm and how they said certain things, he recalled, but I never interviewed anybody. Instead, the passion evident in his writing was inspired by his family history, dating back 5 generations in Louisiana, along with memories of his strong-willed great-aunt, Augustine Jefferson, to whom his novel was dedicated.
This movie stars Cicely Tyson, who was 50.
Oh my gosh. Okay. 50 playing, let's see. I think when we first actually see her, and it's her playing the character, she's supposed to be in her early 20s. Like I buy it 100%. I'm all in.
Oh.
She's 22. Okay.
Okay. Right. And that's when she meets Joe Pittman, and that's where she's introduced in the story. I do think like the actress that plays her when she's young, I'm looking at Valerie
she's
Odell.
Wonderful.
What happened to your shoes?
I took mine off. They hurt my feet.
Hey, what's your name?
Tyson, Master.
They ever beat you, Tracy? You can tell me. What do they beat you with?
Cat o' nine tails, Master.
Why'd they whip you?
I go to sleep looking after young mistress's children.
You're nothing but a child yourself. How old are you right now?
I don't know, Master.
Tyson, I'm not a master. I'm a plain old ordinary soldier. My name's Corporal Lewis Brown. Now, can you say corporal?
No, Master.
Bet you can. Go on, try.
I can't say that.
Can you say Lewis?
Yes, Master.
All right, well, you call me Lewis. And I'm going to call you something besides Tyson. Tyson's a slave name. Back in Ohio, there's lots of pretty names for a girl like you.
What names you got?
Oh, Eloise. Sophie, Marguerite, Jane.
I like Jane.
Okay, you take it. Now, from now on, your name is Jane. Not Tyson anymore. Jane. When you get older, you change it to anything you want, but until then, your name is Jane.
So good. And he talked about Gaines, by the way, our author talked about when they filmed in the South in, I don't know, it's Cicely Tyson, I read in another review, she did with Rex Reed. That guy's a piece of work. But she said that they filmed it on location in Louisiana around Baton Rouge. And there were a lot of people who wanted to be extras in this movie because they loved the book.
Aww.
And she's like, you want to play, enslaved people? Are like, yeah, it's a movie. It's exciting. So it adds to the realism. Like it's just, and it really, I mean, it aired Thursday, January 31st, 1974. And it's a screenplay by Tracy Keenan Wynn, who had to take the story and bring it down to a manageable
way down.
90 minutes.
Yeah. Which I think is very successful. I like we've amped up the device of the reporter who is played by Michael Murphy, who I love. Michael Murphy is this New York City hotshot reporter down getting this story from Miss Jane Pittman, and she's like going to take her time because she's Jane Pittman and you don't rush her. And so we go back and forth with him. The makeup, I'm impressed for 1974.
Oh, yeah, no, that's what I meant. I meant at the time that old makeup was like baby powder and the wigs.
Like a Halloween mask.
Basically.
Just life. Planet of the Apes. Think Planet of the Apes. Like the prosthetics that could limited amount of movement, but a tremendous amount of. I mean, I really buy. It's so beautiful. First of all, like she's so pretty.
Yes, she's ridiculously
she's
beautiful.
So pretty, and the prosthetics and all of that. When she's older, she's still beautiful.
It's Stan Winston and Rick Baker.
And a very young Rick Baker.
Young Rick Baker, who won an Emmy he and Stan won an Emmys. So it's part of the apes. What am I thinking of? Planet of the Apes. It's part that, but they took it up a notch.
Right.
Another level. And then Rick said that part of the problem, he said, is like he interviewed older black women in the South to get an idea. And he met women in their 80s, 90s, 100s. And he's like, they all look 60. Like it's not like my people aging where you really see the difference. And so, but they had to try to figure out a way to make it look real, especially when she's walking around. And that's her.
That's her.
Whew.
That's her selling me 100%. I am all in. Jane Pittman is 110 years old. That's the same person I saw as a little girl. So it's the combination of, first of all, again, her just extraordinary beauty and her phenomenal talent. And then this technology that's evolving. I mean, it's better makeup than in Roots.
It is, and
I'm going to say it.
This is, and we should say this is 4 years before Roots comes out.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a big deal. And as Margos said, like, our generation wasn't raised with a lot of information. I mean, certainly my parents' days, like, they weren't taught anything. But so this was a shock to people to see this stuff. And it's like, we should say, I mean, the story is like, there is a lynching. There is a scene where the mother and baby are killed. You don't see that, but you know about it.
Pretty
It's
much
intense.
you do. Yeah.
So it's intense, but that's what it should be, because that's telling the truth. That's telling the emotional
These things
truth.
actually happened.
Right.
You know?
So, yeah. So when she has a moment, like when she sees Joe Pittman and they're flirting with each other, like, oh, good. She's
Yeah, she gets to have a happy second. Yay.
She has a happy setting. Right.
I didn't hear from Ned for a whole year. I guess that was about 75 or 76. The same year I first saw Joe Pittman. I had him over to supper, and we started seeing each other from time to time. And as things happen between people, one thing led to another.
But the relationship between her and Ned, and the person who plays Ned is Thalmus Rasulala.
Mm-hmm.
I mixed him up with Rod Perry, who plays Joe Pittman. So I'll figure that out. He's amazing.
It's such a good cast.
Crew is so good.
I mean, the kids are so good. The guy that awful man that owns the plantation. He's all like in his old uniform and everything. I mean, you totally buy it. It's so well directed, I think. And, you know, I wish, you know, I understand, like, there's no time for that whole story about the plantation owner and the two sons. I love that part of the book.
Yeah.
But I get it. We can't have absolutely everything. And so you kind of have to take the whole thing out. But I think it still totally stands up and totally works. And she, I mean, it's just a Cicely Tyson tour de force. I mean, she just is so good in this thing. You're just hanging on every word.
And when the scene where Ned like gives that speech and he knows there's soldiers and guys that can hear him.
Yes.
And he's saying that God created us all equal. We're all welcome here. We all belong here. And he says to her, that's going to get me killed, Mama. Or that's, you know,
yeah.
He knows that. He's a martyr in that way, but he's saying the truth.
This land, America, belongs to us all. Well, I don't mean that we own it, but that it's God's. And that makes it as much ours as any man's. You are not bested by no man. Be Americans, but first, be men.
And she knows it's going to happen. And they've been through just so much in their lives. And it's tough, but it's so well done.
I think it's just beautifully done. I like the character of Jimmy's mom, Lena. You know, we see Lena also at different ages. We see her as a very young woman, and we see her, she's older, but she's not nearly as old as Miss Jane. And, it's so believable. It's so well done. And and the same thing, like, I think it really does a good job of giving us this woman's perspective on this extremely violent history, and what the human cost is. And, I mean, it's Cicely Tyson. I mean, it don't even know what to say. I don't even know where to start. She's just the best. She's just amazing. We talked about her when we talked about, was it Fried Green Tomatoes?
Oh, she's in Fried. That's right, where she played the mother
with the frying pan. She gets the guy with the frying pan.
There's one that she plays. Cicely Tyson plays somebody's mother, and she's like a good 70 years old at the time. And I forget the movie that was. Maybe The Help.
Oh, that's right. She's in The Help too. Yes,
she's in The Help. Oh my gosh,
she's always brilliant.
Great.
She's always like amazing. And but this is just. It's so, I mean, she is that woman. She's just that woman. She's that woman at 22. She's that woman at 110 and everywhere in between. And I 100% buy it. And she's Jane Pittman. When I'm reading it, that's what I'm picturing.
Yeah.
And when I see that old white devil horse coming to Clive Ranch, he just stand there and keep a laughing at me. He's laughing at me. I know it. I know it.
The calm. Before we go more, how many children have you given Joe Pittman?
I'm barren.
That is it. Have you told him?
No.
Voilà, c'est pour ça. This is why he rides the horses. To prove something. This is man's way.
You think that old horse gonna kill him?
You want the true response?
Yes.
De l'argent. Money. You may go if you want.
And in the movie, it's a big scene. It's the last scene is of her going to the fountain.
In the movie, we actually see her walking up and it's, okay, look, it's a long walk. It's a lot of screen time for the walk. But she performs the booty out of that walk. I want to see every single step. I'm here for the music. I'm here for the reaching for Lena's hand. I'm here for the pushing people away so she can do it on her own. Every moment of it, every beat of it, I am here for it. And I absolutely am on the edge of my seat, even though I know exactly what's going to happen.
You're staying right here in the quarters today. There's been some trouble in Bayonne. Don't want nobody else to get hurt.
Who got hurt? Did my Jimmy get hurt?
They shot him.
Is he dead?
Oh!
Who shot him?
Nobody knows.
Somebody knows.
Well, I don't know nothing about it. Y'all go on back now.
I'm going to Bayonne.
What do you think you're going to find there except trouble, Miss Jane? You're too old for that.
Jimmy.
Didn't you just hear me say he'd been shot?
He ain't dead, no nothing. Only a piece of him dead. The rest of him is waiting there for us in Bayonne. And I'm going.
Miss Jane, you've been on my place long as I can remember. You've been part of my family. You raised me, and both my boys. But I'm telling you, you ain't going to Bayonne today.
Is you gonna tell me now that I have to leave your place?
Those folks ain't your problem.
Mr. Roberts, the other day, they throwed a girl in jail for trying to drink from the fountain. Today, they killed my Jimmy, and I say, I'm going.
It won a ton of awards, by the way, the Directors Guild of America Award. It won 9 Emmy Awards. So she won for Actress of the Year and then also Best Lead Actress. It's Best Direction, Best Writing. She was. Best Achievement in Makeup. It's Costume Design. And it's all very realistic.
Really good.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and the sets I think are quite. They really give it us. Yeah, it's terrific. But in terms of book versus movie, what do you think?
I really enjoyed this book.
I did too.
But I do like this movie too. I have to say. I mean, I'm missing some of the things from it, but I think, especially for 1974, that's what 50 years ago.
Yeah.
It comes across, I don't know,
I wish it was a mini series like Roots and we had all those other stories is what I wish. I wish I could see Cicely Tyson do all those other subplots and stories and things that we got cut out of this. Like when, there's this scene in the book I just love where I forget what she's running from or running to, but she is really, she's lost like absolutely everything. She's lost her husband. She's lost Ned, and she's getting away from some kind of danger. And she's crossing this river. And as she's crossing the river, she hallucinates that she sees her husband and that he's talking to her. And she hallucinates that she sees Ned. And she's like, no, this is the devil trying. You're not really my husband. You're not really my son. It's amazing. I would love to have seen that on film, but she's so good. I'm going to tie it. For me, it's a tie. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm going to make it a tie too. And it's totally, absolutely. It's also filmed in Mississippi. So in Natchez, I guess. Yeah.
Oh, is that where they did
it? In Mississippi. Oh, sorry. It's Natchez, Mississippi, Woodville, Mississippi, and Francisville, and Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and Geismar, Louisiana.
It's excellent. Watch it, but do read this book. It's so good. It's really, really good. I couldn't put it down. Yeah, I really loved it. So let's talk about what we're doing next. I'm excited about this, too, because I haven't seen a second of this yet.
Well, we do musicals in March also, but this is also Black History Month. So we're like, why don't we do kind of a mishmash? And we'll close out the month with The Color Purple. So that just came out. It was in the theaters. It's on Max right now if you have a subscription. I watched it last night and I started texting Margot. I'm like, I think we really should be covering this. It's so good. We talked about the book before and the
original movie.
Spielberg,
yeah,
and the original movie, like long time ago. So I'm eager to look through that book again and check it out. So I thought it was a really incredible adaptation. I'm really interested in what Margot has to say about it.
I'm excited to see it because I have not. I've been following the fun gossipy drama about it.
Yes,
but I haven't seen a frame of it. I haven't heard a note of it yet. I'm very excited because I do love this book.
Yeah. So that's going to be next week. The Color Purple. Please send us your suggestions. All those places I mentioned before at the top of the show. Our email, once again, is bookversusmoviepodcast@gmail.com. And Margot, where can they find you?
You can find me online at coloniabook.com, and all my social media callouts are at She's Not Your Mama. And where can they find you?
You can find me at brooklynfitchick.com. I'm also at brooklynfitchick for Twitter and for Instagram and Threads. And I'm at Brooklyn Margot for TikTok if you wanted to see those Jane Pittman accolades. We'll be back soon with our new episode. Thank you so much for listening to the Book versus Movie podcast. We're a part of the Frolic Podcast Network. You could find more podcasts you will love at frolic.media/podcasts. You could find us on Twitter, Threads, Blue Sky, and Instagram at Book versus a Movie. Just spelled it all out. We have a Patreon page. Type in there Book vs. Movie Podcasts, where you can find 8 years worth of shows. You can follow Margot D on social media at Brooklyn Margot and also Brooklyn Fitchick. You can find Margot P. at She's Nacho Mama. Thank you again for listening, and please be sure to send along your suggestions for the show. Remember, the book needs to be easy to get your hands on, and the movie has to be streaming on a major platform. We will be back soon with a new episode.